The phone wouldn't stop ringing. Not vibrating. Not politely chiming. Ringing. Shrill. Panicked. Desperate. I watched it light up on the marble bar in my hotel suite while sipping champagne I paid for myself. His father's name flashed first. Then his boss. Then the bank. Then numbers with no names at all. I didn't answer a single one. Across the city, my husband was discovering what it felt like to lose control. And it was beautiful. I crossed my legs, leaned back against the velvet chair, and replayed the security feed on my phone for the third time. There he was, pacing our kitchen like a trapped animal, lifting keys off the counter, slamming them down again, running a hand through his hair, as if that might rewind time. The keys. House. Car. Safe. Lined up perfectly where I'd left them. A declaration. Not surrender. I muted the video just as another call came in, this time from the private banker who used to call me Mrs. Hale, in that careful tone reserved for women who didn't matter. I let it ring, because 3 hours earlier, I'd been standing in that same kitchen listening to my husband explain my future to me like it was a spreadsheet. You wouldn't last a week without me, he'd said, swirling amber liquid in a crystal glass, smug and certain. No money. No protection. No access. You'd be back where you started. Smiling for tips. Answering phones. Being grateful. He'd adjusted his designer tie and waited. For tears. For begging. For panic. Instead, I reached into my handbag and pulled out my keys. One by one, I placed them on the counter. The sound was soft. Deliberate. Final. You're right, I'd said calmly. Let's find out. The color drained from his face as I walked past him, now sitting in a hotel suite under my own name, watching his world collapse in real time. I smiled for the first time in months. He thought I'd walked away with nothing. He had no idea what I'd taken with me. I woke up alone as usual. The bed was cold on his side. He'd fallen asleep in his office again. Glowing monitors, overseas markets, numbers scrolling like scripture. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft hum of a life that looked perfect from the outside and hollow from within. The coffee maker turned itself on at exactly 6. He liked telling people I couldn't operate appliances. It was one of his favorite jokes. Everyone laughed, including me. Good wives knew their cues. I wrapped myself in the silk robe he'd bought last winter. Wrong size, wrong fabric, chosen by an assistant who didn't know me, and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city stretched beneath us, waking slowly. Horns. Sirens. Power. Today was our anniversary. Not that he'd mentioned it. I noticed the invitation on the counter. Another charity lunch. Another afternoon smiling beside women who measured worth in square footage and diamonds. One of them would ask about my little trading hobby. Another would tilt her head and smile with pity. That was when I decided to look for the insurance documents. His office was immaculate. Perfect. Untouched by real life. That's when I knocked over the recorder. It hit the floor and started playing. His voice filled the room. Confident, amused, careless. She asked to see the statements. I told her they were complicated. Too many numbers. Laughter. She believes whatever I tell her. Honestly, I could get her to sign away organs and she'd just ask which pen to use. My hands shook as I picked it up. The date stared back at me. Last week. The day I'd surprised him with lunch at his office. The recording continued. That's why this type works. Pretty. Grateful. Quiet. My father taught me well. I stood there surrounded by glass, money, silence, and finally understood something vital. I wasn't a wife. I was an asset. And he was already planning my depreciation. Back in the hotel suite, the phone rang again. I picked it up this time. Where is she? A man demanded on the other end, his father. Furious. Frightened. And used to not being obeyed. I ended the call without a word. Because while they were panicking, I was just getting started. By the time the concierge knocked to say my room was ready, I'd already erased my husband from my phone. Not ceremoniously. Not dramatically. Just one smooth swipe. Delete contact. Confirm. His name dissolved into a string of digits, anonymous and harmless, like spam. The suite wasn't large, but it was mine. Paid for with money he never believed I could earn. I set my suitcase down, the only one I'd brought, and let myself stand still for a moment, breathing in quiet that didn't belong to him. That suitcase had been waiting for months, hidden in a locker at my gym, stuffed slowly, methodically, one neutral outfit at a time. He monitored credit cards obsessively, statements, alerts, thresholds. But gym visits? Those never raised questions. Trophy wives were expected to maintain their value. I smiled at the thought as my phone buzzed again. 16 missed calls. I didn't listen to the voicemails. Not yet. Instead, I opened the app he didn't know I had access to. The security cameras. There he was back in the kitchen. My kitchen. Our kitchen. Lifting the keys again. Setting them down. Calling someone his business partner first, then his father. Definitely not the police. What would he say? My wife left and didn't take anything I can legally accuse her of stealing. The concierge returned with a gentle smile. Ms. Rowan, welcome. My maiden name sounded strange and perfect all at once. It was the only thing he'd never managed to buy. He liked to tell people my trading was a cute little pastime. He'd laugh at dinners, swirling wine while wives compared kitchens and summer homes. She plays with stocks the way other women play tennis. Everyone laughed. No one knew that the small monthly allowance he'd tossed me years ago, pocket change by his standards, had become something else entirely. I hadn't gambled. I hadn't chased trends. Aitee batcha. Learned. Waited. Silently turning his condescension into capital. Enough to live. Enough to leave. Enough to fight. The first voicemail played accidentally as I tried to silence the phone. This is ridiculous, he snapped. Come home. We'll talk. By the fourth message, the tone shifted. You can't just leave. Half of everything is in both our names. You need my signature. I deleted them all. I'd already stopped needing anything from him. Earlier that morning, before the keys, before the declaration, I'd stood at the windows watching the city wake beneath us. The robe itched. The silence screamed. I remembered the anniversary without checking the date. I always did. He never did. The charity invitation lay unopened on the counter. Another performance where I'd smile while women like Mrs. Calder asked if I was still playing with my phone investments. That patronizing smile. That sweet, poisonous tone. That was when I'd gone into his study. And that was when everything changed. The insurance papers were easy to find. The other folder wasn't. Tucked behind neatly labeled files sat a thin, unassuming binder. Post-nuptial addendum. Dated recently. My signature stared back at me. Perfect. Clean. Forged. Clauses slid into place in my mind like pieces of a weapon being assembled. Abandonment. Forfeiture. Asset reversion. Standing there, surrounded by evidence of his success and my supposed ignorance, something hardened inside me. This wasn't cruelty. This was planning. Back in the hotel, my phone lit up with a text from a number I didn't recognize. Heard you left. When you're ready to talk, I have decades of information you need. I read it twice, then smiled. Because the woman who sent it had poured tea at every gathering, had remembered my maiden name when others couldn't be bothered. Invisible. Overlooked. Dangerous. I replied with 2 words. I'm ready. By nightfall, the city lights flickered on beneath my window. Somewhere across the skyline, my husband was tearing through drawers, phones, accounts, searching for proof that I was as foolish as he believed. He wouldn't find it. I'd taken nothing tangible. No ULA. No documents. No trace. The real theft would come later. Legally. Precisely. With signatures he'd already given me when he wasn't paying attention. The phone rang again. This time I answered. Silence on the other end. Then a breath. Do you have any idea what you've done? His father asked quietly. I looked at the city. Yes, I said. I finally do. And I ended the call. That night, I laid out the first steps on the desk like chess pieces. New accounts. New counsel. A company that would exist only on paper. Complicated enough to disappear in plain sight. Tomorrow my husband would board a plane, convinced I was unstable, emotional, temporary. Tomorrow, I would become invisible. And invisibility, I was learning, was power. We met somewhere no one from his world would ever willingly enter. A narrow restaurant squeezed between a closed laundromat and a funeral home. Fogged windows. Sticky floors. Tea that tasted faintly of metal and patience. Perfect. She was already seated when I arrived, back straight, cardigan button wrong. Hands folded around a chipped teacup like she'd been born holding secrets. To anyone else, she looked harmless. Forgettable. To me, she looked like a woman who had survived by becoming invisible. "You're using your own name again," she said quietly when I sat down. I nodded. I missed it. She slid a dented biscuit tin across the table. "The kind grandmothers keep sewing needles in. Open it at home," she said. "And listen carefully before you react." That was my first lesson from her. Don't explode until you understand the blast radius. Back in my suite, I locked the door, shut the curtains and opened the tin. Inside was a lipstick tube. It looked ordinary. Cheap. A shade no one would ever notice. I twisted the base. Once. Twice. 3 times. The bottom came loose. A flash drive slid into my palm. Inside it lived decades. Not rumors. Not suspicions. Records. Invoices that didn't match filings. Emails that contradicted sworn testimony. Payments that flowed like rivers into places they were never meant to reach. I sat on the floor as dawn bled into the room, scrolling, reading, connecting. This wasn't just my husband. This was an ecosystem. They had a type. That was the first thing that made my stomach turn. Blonde. Polished. Educated enough to be impressive. Not empowered enough to be dangerous. They married us to the same man. My husband wasn't the architect. He was the executor. Underscore 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 underscore. There were others. Before me. Before my name became his. One had died in what was called an accident. Perfect weather. No skid marks. Another had been declared unstable, committed quietly, divorced while medicated. A third had vanished into financial disgrace after being framed for crimes she didn't commit. Each one erased. Each one blamed. Each one replaced. I stared at their photos until they blurred into a warning. For years. That was the window. Long enough to create doubt. Short enough to destroy credibility. I checked the calendar. I was 3 months past the mark. My phone buzzed. A message from my lawyer, sent from a number she used only when things were already moving. "We need to talk today." Her office wasn't impressive. No marble. No glass walls. No art chosen to intimidate. Just books. Certificates. A coffee machine older than my marriage. She didn't waste time. "They're already bleeding," she said. Quietly. I raised an eyebrow. "A client pulled out this morning. Compliance concerns. Anonymous tip." I smiled despite myself. Not victory. Momentum. She slid paperwork across the desk. A company that led nowhere. An account trail that folded into itself. Everything legal. Everything dull. "They'll never look here," she said. "Men like your husband don't believe women build mazes. They believe we get lost in them." That night, my husband boarded a plane. He texted me once before takeoff. "We'll talk when I get back." I didn't reply. Instead, I walked back into the penthouse. Not as his wife. As an archivist. The housekeeper was gone for the week. Paid vacation. No witnesses. I logged into his computer with the password he thought was poetic. Our anniversary. The irony tasted sharp. Files opened like confessions. Trades timed too perfectly. Meetings that aligned too neatly. Patterns obvious once you stopped believing the lie. In a locked drawer, I found the emails. About me. My fragility. My episodes. The psychiatrist he'd already selected. They were preparing the story. I photographed everything. Aligned it back exactly how I found it. Because the most dangerous moment is when they don't know they've already lost. When I reached the final folder, my hands stopped shaking. Exit strategy. For me. Dates. Steps. Asset movements. My removal planned like a merger. I closed the file, sat in his chair, and stared out at the city he thought he owned. Somewhere beneath those lights, women like me were still smiling through dinners, still being told they were lucky, still being diminished politely. I wasn't running anymore. I was interrupting a cycle. My phone buzzed again. A message from her. You're not the first. But you can be the last. I closed my eyes. Then I started planning the part they never anticipated. The first sign wasn't the shouting. It wasn't the slammed doors or the late-night calls, or the way my husband's glass refilled itself faster each evening. It was his handwriting. Shakier. Less precise. The signature of a man losing gravity. He signed whatever I placed in front of him now. Insurance updates. Trust adjustments. Mundane paperwork dressed up as concern. You seem calmer lately, he said one night, watching me too closely over the rim of his glass. Therapy helping? Yes, I replied smoothly. I'm learning acceptance. That wasn't a lie. I'd accepted that he was already finished. The second sign came from another woman. We crossed paths at the gym. Chlorine-heavy air. Empty pool deck. Mirrors fogged with steam. She didn't bother with pleasantries. They know something's wrong, she whispered. They just don't know what. I waited. My husband hired investigators, she continued. Phones. Emails. They're watching everything except the one thing they should. She pulled her sunglasses down just enough for me to see the bruise. I didn't gasp. Didn't reach. I just nodded. Because women like us learn early that survival depends on composure. They're moving assets offshore, she said. Judges are getting calls. Quiet ones. Why tell me? I asked. She hesitated. Then, because when they fall, they take us with them. And I don't want to disappear. She left without waiting for my answer. Kindness and strategy often wear the same face in this world. That night, my husband came home early. Too early. He carried flowers I hated. Hadn't bought in years. They weren't romantic. They were calculated. He poured expensive wine. Laid out cheese with unusual care. Sat across from me at a table meant for 12, but used by two strangers pretending at intimacy. We should go away, he said. Somewhere remote. Isolation. Control. A classic. When? I asked. Soon, he said quickly. Tomorrow, if possible. He slid papers across the table. Just updates, he said lightly. Better coverage. Protection. I signed. Every stroke recorded. Every page captured. Every trap disarmed. You trust me, don't you? He asked, voice tight. I looked him straight in the eye. Completely. It was the most dangerous lie I'd ever told him. The explosion didn't come from me. It came from inside his circle. A divorce filing. Screenshots. Receipts. Another wife broke rank. Not with screams. With evidence. The phone rang. I answered on the 18th attempt. What did you tell her? He demanded. Nothing. I said truthfully. Silence. Then something shattered in the background. They're pulling out, he said hoarsely. Partnerships. Clients. Everything. He laughed, then a broken sound. You ruined us. No. Ikuraktakiatli. You built something that couldn't survive daylight. He hung up. The next day, I dressed like someone who didn't exist. Different hair. Different clothes. Different posture. I moved through his partner's office building unnoticed, timing security like I'd done for years as decoration. The envelope slid under the door with a whisper. Inside, messages my husband never thought would be shared. Mockery. Contempt. Plans. I left before the cameras finished blinking. 3 hours later, my phone buzzed. Partnership terminated. Effective immediately. The men were eating each other alive now. And I hadn't raised my voice once. That night, his father came to the penthouse. I listened from the kitchen as they argued. Find the leak, the older man hissed. You promised the wives were handled. She doesn't understand any of this, my husband insisted. She's not capable. I poured coffee. Walked in. Set the tray down like a good wife. They barely looked at me. That was their last mistake. By dawn he was asleep in his chair. Papers everywhere. Shredded remnants of a life unraveling. I walked through the apartment one final time. Left the jewelry. Left the dresses. Left the illusion. On the counter, I lined up the keys again. House. Car. Safe. Beside them a note. Check your accounts. Outside the city air felt clean. Sharp. Free. Behind me he slept. Unaware that by the time he woke, the world he built would already be gone. He woke up alone. That was how it started. No breakfast sounds. No soft footsteps. No carefully curated normalcy waiting to reassure him that control still existed. Just silence. Then his phone. Once. Twice. Again. By the time he reached the kitchen, the keys were already lined up. Perfectly. And beside them, the note. Check your accounts. I was already gone. Not running. Not hiding. Just finished. I watched the moment unfold from a hotel room across the city. Wrapped in a robe that actually fit, coffee steaming beside me. At exactly 7, the banking notifications would hit. I counted down silently. 3, 2, 1. My phone lit up like a strobe. Missed calls. Voicemails stacking faster than I could delete them. I let them play. Confusion. Anger. Panic. By the 20th message his voice broke. By the 30th he was begging. By the 40th, someone else took the phone from him. A lawyer. A fixer. A man trained to sound calm when everything is already burning. I blocked the number. The news broke before noon. Not his name first. His father's. Arrested at his estate. Cameras everywhere. Boxes of documents carried out like trophies. Decades of secrets finally exposed to daylight. I turned up the volume. Listened. Smiled. The trial moved fast after that. Men like them always believe time is loyal. It isn't. Partners flipped. Assistants talked. Evidence stacked so high it stopped being shocking and started being boring. The truth doesn't need drama when it's thorough. When they played his own recording in court, his voice dismissive and smug, I didn't look at him. I looked at the judge. She didn't flinch. That told me everything. When the final decree slid across the desk weeks later, it felt lighter than expected. Paper doesn't weigh much. Freedom does. I signed my name, my real one, slowly, deliberately, like I was relearning how to write. Across the room he watched. Smaller now. Quieter. Ordinary. He tried to speak. I didn't let him. Some endings don't need dialogue. The foundation opened in a modest space above a shuttered office. No marble. No dormen. No ilusions. Just desks, windows, and women walking in with folders clutched like lifelines. We didn't promise revenge. We promised clarity. One document at a time. One signature at a time. Months later, my mother visited. She sat at my small kitchen table, watching me cook badly but confidently. You're different, she said softly. I know, I replied. She smiled. You look like yourself. That night, after she slept, I stood by the window and looked out at the city. The same city that once felt like a cage. It didn't look smaller. I did. I saw him once more. At a bar. Older. Hollowed. Still expensive, but no longer impressive. He tried to tell me I'd destroyed everything. I corrected him. You built a house of cards, I said calmly. I just stopped holding it up. Security escorted him out. The bartender poured me another drink. On the house. Now my days are quiet. Morning trades. Afternoon meetings. Evenings where no one tells me who to be. The life I built doesn't photograph well. And that's the point. Because the night I lined up those keys, I didn't walk away empty-handed. I walked away awake. And once you wake up, no one ever gets to convince you you're nothing again. Please click the subscribe button, like, share, and comment. This will encourage me to make more interesting stories. Also, let's know where you are watching from. Thank you and see you in the next story.